Hello, hello. We should be live. We should be live.
Excellent. Hello, good day. I'm Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook. This is Stream of Truth.
And I am Sean Kelly, and this is Arya. Arya Stark of Winterfell.
Excellent. Excellent. So today's juicy topic is how to stop judging ourselves.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
This is really big. Really useful.
I think I'll say that this core piece of our consciousness that we entangle and fight with to such an extreme is, to me, the most important part of ourself to dismantle, because it's the judgment which does not allow the forgiveness to form. And once the judgment's gone, forgiveness can be embodied. But so you end up in a state where the other's forgiven before they act, which is where I tend to find myself now. And so for me, it's such a huge thing. You don't need to forgive because there was never any expectation on them in the first place, because there was no judgment. And then you can apply this same stuff to yourself. And so, yeah, so I'm just really excited to talk about it today because it's so pervasive in our society, judgment.
Yes.
And in all of our relationships, in every interaction that we have, there's tons of judgment tends to be peppered in there a lot of times.
I'm almost thinking it's kind of the infrastructure upon which everything is constructed. Whether it's the school system, I'm going to judge you on how you do on tests. Whether it's your job, you're going to be judged. There'll be reports and evaluations. And whether it's your body, I'm going to judge it. How much does it weigh? What does it look like? It's almost the entire way we view things is through judgment.
Yeah. Generally, it really never ends. And that's the interesting part of it, is like the ego, or the aspect of self that is sort of fear-based, which I tend to call the ego. But I think we've talked before that I sort of see the ego as having a positive and a negative side to it.
Yes.
The ego being any identification or belief structure.
Yeah.
So, any of our negative belief, fear structures that are existing will cause us to point to things that are not right. And I think one of the main things that we want to try and do is notice when we're doing that, that a lot of times we are judging others because it's just an aspect of ourself that we don't accept. So we're actually judging ourselves. And so if we focus either way to stop judging others, when we observe ourselves judging others or when we're judging ourselves, either way cleans this up for us. So it's perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
I've found, I don't know about you, but I've found that when we try to stop judging others, like just noticing when we're doing it and trying to be like, I don't actually feel that way. Just let go of it, because as those intrusive judgmental thoughts come in to others, that's actually a bit more effective at allowing myself to accept myself. But I have to remember that, like, it's okay for them to do it, to be that way. It's also okay for me to be my way. Like I when I first started, I kind of forgot that. I lost track of letting myself. I was very forgiving of everyone else, but not so forgiving of myself. And I think that's very typical.
Yes, I think it seems like it's a bit harder to stop judging ourselves than even others. We give sort of grace to others more easily than grace to ourselves.
Yeah.
I almost think this could be, we did a series a couple weeks ago about know you are enough, follow your own guidance, feel your feelings. And I feel like this also is just one of those huge foundational elements to your personal freedom within your being. Peace of mind is the judgment piece. And it's kind of the same thing, but I'll just use the word comparison. The comparison to others, so the judging of others, the judging of self, and then the comparison of ourselves to others, or even to our own idealized version of how we want to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, the act of comparison, that draw to compare, is what forms the judgment. If you're not comparing in the first place, then you won't get into judgment.
Yeah.
So if you can even do that, like essentially those judgy stories still exist though, but you're not inviting them in as much, and so they start to lose their muster, their energy, and they'll start to fade away, and sort of heal slowly. The other way to do it is to like go right into those feelings, right? But if you're not comparing, then you're not judging, at all.
Yeah. And I think where perhaps the comparison and then the judgment starts is this orientation that we're indoctrinated into of needing to match up to certain external expectations that are really outside of ourselves, and really outside of our own divine connection and our own divine mission.
Yeah.
So whenever we're comparing ourselves to anyone else, we're turning away from our own purpose. We're abandoning our own purpose. Our life journey is going to be very unique and very different from anyone else's, and what our gifts are and what we end up doing. So I keep just being really inundated with that phrase of don't abandon oneself. Like that is a huge teaching for me right now with spirit.
Yeah. I'd like to say too, when we start to like become more aware of trying to find our purpose and like what we truly resonates with us to do, we fall back into our old habits where we envision our future self and what our future self looks like, and that ideal. So we hold an ideal of our future self being more wise or more whatever. Which is true. Our future self will be more wise. It will be what we endeavor ourselves to become. But we end up looking at that as a negative thing, because we say, oh, I'm not that yet, so I'm not good enough yet.
Yes.
But what we're not seeing is really all we're doing is planning how we want to be eventually. It can be seen as just a blueprint of where we're going to go, not where we need to be now. We are where we are now. This is just the map. And instead of looking at it and going, oh, I'm not there yet, you're never there, because it's the future. It doesn't exist yet. So you're never going to be there, and you have to be okay with that and just surrender to the idea that I'm not there yet, but I will be there because it's my will to do that. And I'm doing it. And then once all that sort of lines up, it becomes a lot easier to not judge yourself on these expectations that you've set.
Yes. We've been talking about this idea that, to me, I've landed on this concept of success as simply that, to be on the path. If you are in alignment and you are showing up and you are following your guidance and moving to act through love and faith and not fear, you are a huge success.
Yeah, you're doing pretty good.
That no matter what is currently showing up in the external in terms of your quote unquote achievements or these 3D metrics of success. Like, so to me, I have this new juicy definition of what success is. Success is just showing up every day in your life, feeling your feelings, following your guidance, not giving up, working to not compare ourselves to others. This has kind of been blowing my mind. because I think it's so easy. Oh, it's so easy. There are so many invitations to look outside of ourselves and think, oh, I'm not as good as this person. Oh, look what this person is doing. Oh, I really wish I was able to do that. And just really feel bad about ourselves, about what we're not yet doing or not yet being.
Yeah.
And I'm really trying to just not pay attention to those invitations and really trying to ground down into this truth that I know it's the truth.
Yep.
My soul just dances around and skips when I'm in this truth. The truth is, I'm showing up in my life, and that is success every day, no matter what I have to show for it. So
yeah.
And what I have to show for it is my consciousness.
Right. Yeah. And trusting also that, like, you know, your heart, you know that you're approaching everything with good intentions, as, you know, someone that you're happy with how you frame the world generally, you know, trust yourself that, like, you know, if you aren't happy with how you frame the world, then that's indicative of a good intentioned soul, right? The unhappy soul, the one that's disappointed in themselves, they're noticing how much they've been entangled with an illusion and fear, and that's why they're feeling that way. If they were a negatively oriented, I shouldn't say soul, but a negatively oriented entity, they're going to be prosperous in that environment. They're gonna look and feel more or less fine. They relish in the darkness, in the confusion. They do well in that. So the fact that you're unsettled by it all is indicative of your good nature, and this good nature will permeate through your decisions. And if you just trust that I'm gonna keep trying to do my best and be my best, even if I stumble and, you know, make some little, you know, errors in judgment, those errors are just there to help me be better at that.
And this,
you know,
sort of different idea that there is no end point of success. Your
right.
success is every day just being alive and showing up in your life. We are all successful right now in every aspect.
You're already successful.
We are all already so successful in every aspect of your life, because you are just here showing up. That is just sort of dismantling this societal idea of what success is, that success is achievement or material possessions or a certain way you look or certain accolades you receive or certain titles. Those are all social constructs. Those are all things we have collectively decided are success.
Yeah.
We don't have to buy into that.
Right.
I want to just really share success is you being yourself, is you tuning into your feelings, is you tuning into your dreams, and you showing up in your life every day. This is success. You are already successful.
I'd say too, like, the only real way that I personally can orient myself around success or failure is success for me is when I'm being expansive.
Yes.
And failure is when I'm not being expansive. And in that way, I'm able to rest and be gentle with myself. And, you know, maybe watch a movie or play a video game or anything of that relaxation or distraction type nature, just to I guess have some peace, or just not be so busy, distract my mind a little bit. My mind can be very racy. So but in those moments, because I'm using those instruments, like whether it's a movie or a book or whatever, I'm using those instruments to expand my consciousness. So I'm observing symbols in those things. I'm still expanding and I'm enjoying myself. That is the goal, to expand and to do that. And so as long as I'm doing that, then I can be happy with my progress. When I start to feel a little unhappy with my progress is times when I'm like, I'm not so expansive. I'm in a state of fear or judgment or anxiety about the future. Those types of states. So it's never now about anything that I do. It is more about my orientation of mind, and am I in an expansive mode and vibration of thought, or am I in a constricting negative frequency that's not allowing me to expand, that's causing me to shrink in within myself and be small.
Yes. I love everything you've said. And we talked about this last night that, say, for instance, over the past year, maybe there haven't been so many external achievements for each of us in terms of like doings, products, services, whatever. But it feels like for each of us, there has been a massive amount of consciousness expansion
Mm-hmm.
and a massive amount of inner peace and inner work. And these things are somewhat valued by certain aspects of our society. But I think what we're saying is the more we embody that orientation of the value of the expansion of one's consciousness, then the more we are in alignment and the more life spirit is going to flow through us, and we're going to feel eventually the inspired action. And for instance, you had this amazing inspired action
Oh,
today.
oh yeah, today, yeah. So I started writing a book. It's currently called. Actually, I won't disclose the title just yet because I haven't decided. But it's basically channeled material, and it's how would I describe it? How would you describe it?
It's sounds like the word of God in the most beautiful, loving, poetic, inspirational manner. It's mind-blowing.
Thank you, thank you. Wow, that's how it feels. And I basically woke up early and wrote for 2.5 hours or something this morning. Not quite that long, but yeah. So I guess I felt this urge. I had a dream of myself awakening and remembering myself like millions of times, over and over and over and over. The dream just repeated and repeated, but it was different selves. And then I woke up and just immediately was like, I have to write, and started writing this book and started writing this story. There's a boy, Damien, talking to his father, and sort of the father is representative of the higher self, as Damien, the soul, is preparing to incarnate into a body, but it's framed in sort of the world of man and that type of thing. So it's yeah, it's those types of inspired actions are very imperative to follow. What ends up happening though is we get a little voice going, ooh, and it's not the right time, or don't do that, or here's something else to distract yourself. I'd feel more comfortable if you did this first, because that's a little spooky, or that's a little challenging.
Yeah, and just having had basically a front seat to a lot of your ascension and expansion over the past 2 years, if I might just use you as an amazing example, that you had a very profound awakening about 2 years ago, and a previous awakening before that, but a more intense awakening 2 years ago. And I know that you had some questions over your own sanity.
Yeah.
And your gifts are just amazing, the channeling gifts and many other gifts. And you have been able to not judge yourself, and you have been able to not compare yourself. And you took a lot of time to just go within over the past 2 years.
Yeah, this sabbatical was to expand my consciousness, to remember myself, was the most important thing that I've ever done.
Yes. And amazing that you kept at it, because I would imagine there were many invitations to possibly feel bad about, I'm not really doing much, or other people
Get a job.
Yeah.
Get a job, you bum.
Right, right. And so I think you're just this amazing example of honoring your internal experience, following your guidance, lowering the judgment of yourself, lowering the comparison of yourself to others. And then look what has happened.
Yeah.
You seem to be channeling directly from God.
It does seem
this
like that.
amazing book is coming through you. It's just a beautiful journey, and it shows what happens when we don't judge ourselves and when we trust ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's for whatever reason, that seems to be part of my reason for being here, is to do this thing that seems unworldly or otherworldly, supernatural. Yes. Almost.
Yes.
And then, sort of people will wonder, how did he do that? He seemed to be a normal dude.
Yes.
And he, like, you can look at videos, and I used to play video games on the internet for people.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, this shift.
Yes.
And I think the whole purpose is to show people that any person can figure this out and find this connection. I think that's the actual purpose of the book itself. It's not so much about me. It's about one's relationship with themselves and one's relationship with God.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think this would be the main thrust of what we might be saying in this episode of not judging yourself is, and this is what we say pretty much every episode, coming back to yourself, tuning out the external noise, coming back to yourself, to your own whisperings of your soul.
Exactly. Yeah. I like that. Whisperings of your soul is very poetic.
Yes. Yes. And a further thing I want to add here is trusting your path, trusting life, trusting your life, that my life, spirit with me, is leading me on this beautiful, mystical journey. I don't know the next step. I don't know exactly where it's going to end up, but just trusting your own life, that your own life is leading you through exactly what your soul is asking for and exactly to the treasures that you want to receive in your life. And letting go of the comparison of what other people's lives, what's happening with them, and just coming back to the self, coming back to your own trust in your own path, that it's going to all be perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to say thank you to everybody for watching all the chat. We've got a bunch of people chatting. Wendy just asked, Wendy said I was awesome. Thank you, Wendy. You're awesome. Wendy asked, I missed the part about the book. Yeah, I basically just started writing a book. We talked about it briefly. And I think it'll be done within a couple of weeks because it's just flows out. So I wouldn't be surprised if I've done it really quickly. I may actually release it piecemeal for free on the YouTube channel as well, and then turn it into an audiobook. And then also, of course, do the printed versions and stuff. But I think I might just release it piecemeal on the channel for free. I'll read it, basically. So you can kind of stay apprised of it. And I may end up doing a GoFundMe or something to try and promote the book and establish a budget for that type of thing. But I haven't really worried about any of that. I just sort of started writing a book randomly. But I'm almost done the first chapter already, so it's been going really well. So thank you guys for everything. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
So do you have I'm trying to think if I have any practices for judgment. And so actually I'd like to highlight Debbie's practice. Debbie said, when I catch myself judging others, I try to ask myself, why is this triggering me? What within myself needs healing so that this doesn't trigger me? It's usually something within us that needs love. That is exactly, I think, what's happening, right? It's we're observing our reflection, and something about it disturbs us. And it's not the reflection that disturbs us, it's us that we're seeing, right? What's going on? And that's the biggest practice that the exact same thing that I do, that Debbie mentioned, was just try to constantly catch myself doing that. those intrusive thoughts that will judge people's appearance, like, oh, look at him, look at her, they're being so whatever. These types of thoughts can then be examined to be like, oh, it's really just that I wouldn't really want to be that way. Like, I wouldn't be comfortable if I was being that way, or if I looked that way, or if I was talking that way, or if I was committing that crime, or whatever. I don't like that of myself. And then we need to examine why that is and all that stuff. And then the more polarizing it is, the more difficult it can be to really look at it. Like in the darker cases of things in humanity that you witness, it can be difficult to know that I am observing myself. I contribute to this thing that I'm witnessing. Not me as Sean, but me as my divine essence was a part of all of this. And it is the plan. And to learn how to accept that and forgive it. And a lot of resentment can form too, I found. Resentment of one's own path. It can feel very lonely. So then you start to judge your own decision to even walk down this road of expanding your consciousness. So that's whenever judgmental thoughts towards others arise, or of the self, try to just investigate them. You could do it just as a curious mind. That's the best practice that I can think of. Do you have any other ones?
I do.
Yes. Awesome.
I love the practice you just mentioned, and the viewers' practice is awesome too. I just love the word practices, right? Because all of these things we're talking about are just things we practice. We notice our mind going a certain direction. We're like, oh, I'm just going to go back and practice this other orientation that feels better. So we don't have to beat ourselves up. We don't have to judge ourselves if we go a direction that's not ideal. Oh, I'm just going to practice how I want to be. Okay, so first of all, in terms of this, it's easy to judge other people. We're really conditioned to do it in our society. During my doctoral therapy training, this one question just hit me like a ton of bricks and has remained in my heart ever since. The question is, how does this person's behavior make sense given their context? And that to me is just a game changer every time. There's always a reason why anyone is doing anything. And it has to do with what's going on for them from their childhood, from their present life, from societal programming. So if I ever go into a judgy orientation towards someone and like, why are they doing that? I come back to that beautiful question. How there's surely some way that this person's behavior makes sense given their context. And I may very well be doing the same thing if I were in their shoes. So a blanket of grace.
That's exactly what I remember.
Yeah.
In fact, if my experience was equivalent to theirs, I literally would only be capable of doing the same thing that they did.
Yes. And I am that person on the larger level anyway, and they are me. Yes. So just a complete blanket of grace, compassion, love, when we're in that highest vibration.
Yeah.
And then a practice I like to do in terms of my self-judgment, this is kind of a newer practice for me, and you've helped me hone in on this practice is, and I think this is the truth, what I'm about to say, is that I'm God and I've created this whole thing that's going on here. And I've created it so that I can better know myself. And not just know myself, but also just love myself, accept myself, appreciate myself. And so if I get a little triggered and I start to think, I'm not as good enough as someone else, you're channeling God right now, right? So, so there's an invitation for me to be like, I'm not channeling God. I'm not as good as him or something like that.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're
right,
saying. Yeah.
there's all these constant invitations we all receive from the external to devalue ourselves, that I can't do that, or I don't look like that, or I don't have that, so I'm not worthy. So the way I like to think of it is I'm almost like in this play, and there's all these other characters, and it's fascinating, and there's all these invitations for me to abandon myself and for me to think that I'm not worthy.
Hmm.
Am I going to fall for that? No,
Right.
I'm not going to fall for that. I'm not going to take those invitations. I'm going to, no matter how great everybody else is, I am also going to again and again turn back to myself and love myself and appreciate who I am.
I'd like to give a quote. Nothing real may be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Here within lies the peace of God. Basically, you are divine in nature. You are perfection itself, perfection incarnate in form. And you are perfect as you are. Anything that assaults that perfection is unreal and does not exist.
Yes. And when we have feelings of lack of self-worth or devaluing ourselves, it doesn't feel good. Our higher self is not in alignment with that feeling. Mm-hmm. That's why it doesn't feel good. So when we come back to ourselves, and no matter what we're doing or not doing, as you just said, we are each a divine aspect of the Creator and perfect as we are. Mm-hmm. We are divinity as we are. And that feels good. Mm-hmm. That feels good. That is in alignment with our higher consciousness.
Yeah.
So that's a practice that I'm doing over and over again. It's so easy to get the invitation to feel bad about oneself because you're not this, you're not that. So I'm coming over and over back to that practice. And I wanted to share one other practice. And this is about the judgment of appearance of our physical vessels, okay, towards other people or towards ourselves. Like there's obviously these societal standards that have been disseminated that, certain body shape is better, is more appealing, is more perfect than others. And so I try to have these new eyes when I look at people, or older people are not attractive if they have wrinkles or gray hair or whatever, all those stories. I just try to have these open eyes of everything is beautiful. Every body shape is beautiful. Every way a face shows up is beautiful. Obviously it's all part of God. And just to keep trying to remove those layers of programming that only one body shape is beautiful or something.
Yeah.
And then also with myself and with others, that however I look is how I intended as part of God showing up here in this body. This came from the divine. So it's got to be perfect.
Yep.
Every body is perfect because we're made by God.
Yep. Ross said, gaze into the mirror and see the Creator. So you could think of the mirror as literally you or Sean or Tassel or whoever looking into the mirror, gazing at the Creator, but also know that the entire reality about you is a mirror reflecting yourself as well. So you gaze into that mirror and see the Creator. You see the Creator in everything. And when you're doing that, it starts to become pretty hard to judge. It becomes pretty hard not to forgive. And I noticed that Wendy and Debbie are talking about forgiveness right now. And yeah, it is challenging. It is challenging to forgive. I'm not gonna lie about that. It depends, I think, on our tie to the identities and the roles and how we perceive. And it's. So I want to be very careful about how I talk about this because when people have been introduced to trauma in some way, what happens is a form of separation, just a chasm splits between the two entities, right? The one that has committed the trauma and the one that's received the trauma. A chasm splits them. You could call it a karmic chasm. And this person has assaulted itself, and this person has been assaulted by itself. And it can be hard to frame it like that because we're very attached to our identity as humans. We're very attached to being the doer and identifying with all the various things that we're doing. And so when we have that experience, we can very easily just hang on to that. And then also, because that experience was so bad, obviously the person is evil. And that, or not evil, it doesn't have to be that, deep, but it could be, that person has done stuff to us. And it's a framing of it that causes us to feel separate from them. And forgiveness can be best applied by starting to understand that at a higher or soul level, both souls love each other. Both souls are in an embrace, trying to teach and learn from each other. What the humans enact in the play of life, we could call it, is representative of the learnings that the souls are seeking from each other. And therefore, both souls are infinitely grateful to each other for the offerings of service. The soul that was a victim is grateful and understands the sacrifice that the first soul made to plunge itself into darkness so that it could be the committer of atrocity of some kind. There's a lot of suffering that went into forming that identity in that soul, in that human incarnation, to then have it go do things that were, traumatic to others or to you. And if we can understand that and start to really orient ourselves that way, we can start or we can tiptoe into forgiveness and start to be like, okay, yes, I did learn a lot from that experience. I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to face my fears. I learned all these things. We can start to realize that we can thank them for their service, just as our soul is doing in the higher dimensions. And I think we know our soul's doing that. I think we know our souls love each other unconditionally. I think that's pretty common to know that. But at the human level, we manifest separation. And so that's sort of how I would phrase all that. I hope that didn't come across as minimizing. I've had things done to me, and I've experienced a lot of catalyst and trauma and through my life. Some of it self-inflicted, some of it from others. And, I have a lot of sympathy for people who are in that position now. I guess what I'm trying to help illustrate is that it's us who helps us ourselves out of it. And the way that we do that, the real way that I've found in my experience, is forgiveness. And it's hard to do that. It takes work. It takes effort to do that, I think.
Yeah. Everything you said, I think, is so true and so amazing. And I'm just going to add to what you've just beautifully expressed. Yes, the larger perspective is these big sort of events where there might have been some trauma are contracted on the soul level. And it is absolutely this sacrifice of the perpetrator to embody that role. Mm-hmm. And that larger perspective has to be somewhat veiled. Otherwise, we couldn't fully experience the experience,
right? Yeah,
and get all of it out of it. If we just always knew for sure, we planned this, and this person is making a sacrifice for me on a soul level,
we wouldn't identify with it.
Yeah, then we wouldn't experience.
It would be meaningless.
The traumatic part of it, which is leading to a lot of expansion as well. So it does have to be a bit veiled in order for it all to we have to believe it's real and is occurring in that way in order to have a real experience, for us to truly experience it as real. The bigger truth is on this soul level, that
Yeah.
it's a gift
Yeah.
that we are receiving. And then what I really want to say about forgiveness, and I say this both from personal experience, spiritual experience, and then working with so many clients over the years around forgiveness, is I really think the only way to forgiveness is for you to honor every single feeling you have around the experience. And some of those feelings might feel dark. It could be, I feel hatred towards this person. I would like to bodily injure them, even, in my fantasy. I wish it never happened, or anything that comes up. These all need to be honored and validated, and that is the way they will move through and be integrated. And then eventually on the other side, there will be different feelings that maybe you might be more comfortable with, and there will be peace. But the only way to forgive, I really believe, is to honor every single feeling you have and to give yourself full permission to do so.
Yeah. And
to get rid of the idea that there are any taboo feelings, that you're not allowed to feel, certain things. Just dispel that idea.
Yeah. I'd like to say, just to add to that the way that we can see this happening in a sort of energetic way with our emotion is we take the emotion of despair or anger or whatever it is. We feel that first within ourselves. If it's against somebody, if somebody caused trauma for us and we're judging them, we'll take all that energy and project it onto them as the enemy, right? So what we're recommending here is that we feel all those without projecting it onto the other, just knowing it's our feelings, it's our stuff, and it's okay. We don't have to put it on anyone. That's an activity that we tend to do by default, is just put everything on everyone else. We don't have to do that. We can just feel it, like you said. And when we do that, without just rationalizing it by explaining, I feel this because this person did this, which in linear time, that is rationally, logically true in a way, right? So the ego will attach onto that, rational mind will attach onto that and be like, well, they did this, so I feel this way because they did this. But the ego is ignorant to the process of manifestation and how the reality actually forms when it's making those assumptions. And so that's why those forms exist. When we transcend that, we start to see, okay, that actually we co-created this scenario, and what they did is actually irrelevant. They didn't do anything. All of this experience was within my own consciousness, and I can feel it all. And then at the end of it, there'll be insights. There's always insights and peace at the end, always.
Yeah, I think this is one of my favorite words, is honor. Honor whatever your internal experience is about this event. Honor, feel, get your insight, and there will be peace and so much wisdom on the other side. And then I also want to just mention one of my mentors during my clinical training. His name is Michael White, and he would always talk about the two-sided story of trauma, of any trauma. There's always what happened to you, sort of what in a way was maybe, forced upon you, what came into your field. And then it's how did you respond? How did you move forward after that? How did you expand? And that, and to be in the truth of what happened, to not sidestep that or rose-colored glasses over that, to honor, okay, this is what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have to live there. We don't have to live in that side of the story of this happened to me. We can more live in the other side of the story of, well, what did I do about it? What did I learn? How am I now able to help other people who might have had that same experience? What do I know about myself now that I didn't know then? How have I expanded? How has my consciousness been shifted? We can live there.
Yeah.
We can live there. We can visit, with what actually happened and some of the terror and the trauma of that, not to ignore that, but we can live in the gifts that did come about from that challenging experience.
It's our deepest traumas that inform our gifts, I find. Like if we look back at even just why I do what I do is because I felt lost and didn't feel like I had anybody or any, buddy going through the same things that I'm going through. And so I started making videos to talk about these things because at the time I didn't know really why I was doing it. I watched the first video that I did after I had my awakening last night, I think it was. And, in there I said, I think if I do this, it'll be easier for me to look at myself and others will be able to see that they're not alone trying to figure all this out. I think that's basically what I said. And it's interesting to me how like spot on I was. I felt lost and alone. And so I wanted to help other people feel less lost and alone. And so that's what informed what I'm doing. And that trauma was the deepest trauma that I had, that sort of was always in me. Other people went through other experiences, but maybe they're orienting themselves to help serve people that are going through those or in the midst of those experiences right now. They are uniquely positioned. Once they can find balance and peace, they're uniquely positioned to be experts in that exact thing. And, can offer help that way. And not that you have to, but wherever these deep traumas exist, there's always wisdom that comes out of it that can be accessed then to help serve others.
Yeah, our traumas are our invitations to uncover our deepest gifts that we are here to give to ourselves and to others. It's really it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's brutal and beautiful. But yeah, I think I'd probably be like just a total brat if I didn't have a lot of traumas that expanded me and that gave me the motivation to expand myself and learn and hopefully to serve others. I think I'd be probably an insufferable little brat.
A lot of the self-inflicted traumas that I've endured have been very humbling over the years. Yes. I've humbled myself deeply in so many different ways. I
am such a better person for my traumas.
Yes, I cannot imagine me without them. And I am grateful for all of my experience.
The way I sometimes think of it is these challenging, painful, traumatic experiences, we have to grow bigger than them, basically. Something happens and it's really hard and we might think we can't bear it and we can't survive. So we have to grow bigger than them in order to move on. And we do. And we can.
We can transcend them. We can.
And everyone does eventually at some point on their soul's journey. And the pain is temporary. The pain we feel, we can move through it, as we were talking about feeling your feelings. The pain is temporary. The expansion it's eternal. It's not just, we're bigger in this lifetime. We are bigger eternally for it. Looking at it that way is just, it's a pretty good deal.
Once the consciousness remembers itself, that being becomes eternal. So they will be active participants in the next, as they die and move into the next incarnation, they're basically going to be awakened from the get-go. They'll, basically as they depart this place, they'll be remembering that they're going home to themselves. And in that way, we end up surpassing the body and the time and all these things by doing these practices. The practices are about what we experience in the physical world. And then eventually what happens is after we've learned what we needed to learn, we remember and transcend these worries of that nature. And then we become eternal with the one, right? And that's the pathway to get there can be done however like so many different infinite ways, right? Everybody's totally unique. And I always found it helpful to remember, like, everybody's doing that. Even the people that are like totally confused and doing crazy stuff, they're doing that too. And they may just be earlier in the stages of evolution. We're not all like evolving at the same rate or anything, right? It's all dependent on what we set up for ourselves. And so it becomes really important when you're observing society, right? Just society doing wacky stuff, like forcing people to do things, forcing people to not do things, forcing people, whatever. You can't cross the road unless the light is this color, like whatever it is, right? That's all just, it's insanity is what it is. And you can be okay with your own insanity in some ways. Like you're witnessing your own forgetfulness of yourself in the society, and it's manifest through all of the beings there, and you have to accept all of that too. So
it's a blanket of trust that I think we're all perhaps being invited to embody. It's a blanket of trust, to trust yourself, to trust what's happening externally, that it's expanding us.
Yep.
And just overall, just trust this whole vehicle of life that we're all participating in, just to hold trust, showing up, holding trust, having faith that it's all serving the greater good in the larger sense.
Yes. Debbie said something great as well. She said it's during the times that we perceive as unpleasant that we learn lessons and push ourselves outside of our comfort zone towards growth and expansion. Everything was great. If everything was great, we would never grow. It's a really important point. It's another way of saying that is to say that without the darkness, you couldn't perceive the light, or without the shadow, there'd be no way to discern the difference of the illuminated versus the non-illuminated. Without fear and separation, you can't see unity. So all of these things are totally required and part of the perfect design of your own design. You made this exact plan that you're following through.
Without these glimmers, or larger than that, feelings of discomfort, there would be no seeking. If we're just totally content and everything is perfect, there will be no seeking.
Exactly.
So it's all orchestrated for us to continue to seek and expand, which is the path of the soul.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect time to end.
Awesome.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or?
I just want to say that I love everyone. I love everyone who is on with us right now, and everyone who might be on later, and just for everyone to know the perfection of their beautiful divine soul. We are all amazing. Just so much love to everybody.
Yes, so much love. Thank you for all the chat. I'm going to read through all of it. I've caught a bunch of it, and there's been lots of nice things said back and forth to each other and to us as well. And I've seen some stuff said nicely to me and Tassel as well, which we really appreciate. So thanks everyone for watching, sending love. And
thank you so much. You are perfect. You are so loved. You are magnificent.
Take care.
Bye.